Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this week's installment of Our Perspective on Relationships. If you have been with me for this series, then you know that I have talked about our relationship with God and our relationship with spouses. Now, this week, I will be talking about our relationships with our children. This is one that I know that I've been looking forward to since I am a parent myself. And once again, I have to tell you that I am no expert on parenting. Like many of you, I learned about kids while I was parenting. It's kind of a trial by fire kind of thing. And the only learning curve that there really is the grace of God. But really, before we go any further, I do need to offer up an apology. I do know that there are many people out there who, for whatever reason, are not parents at this time. Maybe that comes as a personal choice that is agreed upon by both spouses, and that's great because having children isn't a requirement, even if our well-meaning mothers and mothers-in-law say so. But as long as you are both in agreement, then you have to do as you see fit. But then again, maybe some of you have children that have long since grown up. If that is the case, then I'm sure that you can relate to some of this material, and you could probably offer up a few tricks of the trade to us. But I also know that there are some of you who are really longing to have children at this time. And for whatever reason, you just don't find yourself in that role right now. And to that, I have to say that I am truly, truly sorry. And I pray that God will provide you with all of the peace and comfort and understanding that you need during this time of struggle. Now, many years ago, long before I was ever married, I remember thinking about what it would be like to have children. At first, I was really, really resistant to the matter. I couldn't even imagine myself as a mother. I didn't even think I'd ever really willingly sign up for such a monumental task. But then again, I hadn't met the right guy yet. And when I did, we talked at length about having a family. And over time, these two amazing persons came into our lives. First one, and then the other, and now they are essentially both adults. And what a trip it's been, I have to say. Now I can kind of look back and see how much all four of us have really grown up. I can see where some things went right and where some things really didn't go right. And if I'm honest, I can see where there were many things that just simply crashed and burned, more times than I'd like to admit. But that's how I learn things, by messing up and seeing what I should have done. And thankfully, my girls have been very, very forgiving, and so has God. What were your first thoughts about parenthood? And if you're a parent now, is it as you thought it'd be? Now, we have been talking these last couple of weeks about relationships. And we know that the most important relationship that we could ever have is with God. He is the creator and the designer of all that we are, and he longs for us to know him deeply and intimately. That is what we were created for in the first place. He is the one who guides us, who blesses us, who reprimands us, who is present with us every single moment, who is ever faithful to us. It is a relationship that will never fail us or hurt us or ever leave us, no matter what we've done or what we will ever do. We mentioned before that God shows us how much he loves us, most notably through the people that he places in our lives. And he can even use the most casual acquaintances to change our lives. And while we may have many types of relationships with other people, the most significant relationship that we can have is with our spouses. There is a certain intimacy and a certain vulnerability that comes with being married that no other relationship has, which is why it can be the worst thing that have ever happened to us, or the best thing that has ever happened to us. And sometimes it doesn't always work out the way we think it should. But having a strong relationship with God carries with us into our marriages. When we place all of our hopes and our dreams and our goals firmly in God's lap, He will bless us in ways that we may not entirely expect. He fulfills even our deepest, most heartfelt needs, which are the need for love or significance and belonging and purpose and safety and understanding. And as He does this so generously, we can experience a peace that is beyond anything that we have ever experienced. We fill up on all of the things that only He can provide, so then we can then lavish those same things on our spouses. In this way, marriage is a visible demonstration of what God's love looks like here on this earth. What He pours out onto us, we pour out onto our spouses, serving each other with humility and grace, leaving much room for forgiveness. And this becomes a wonderful foundation for parenthood and family. Now, we all approach parenthood with many preconceived ideas, just as we did with marriage. We learn from our parents or from significant other influences what we think we want parenthood to look like. I remember many times thinking that I would never be like my parents. And in many ways, this is true. But there are many times I find myself saying the very same things that my mother said to me. Or sometimes I do some of the things that my dad did. This is very frustrating to me, since I swore I would never do things like they did. But it's also very funny at the same time. I'm quite sure that my mother is somewhere in heaven chuckling over this whole thing too. How did you learn about parenthood? Were there things that you'd hope you'd never do? If there is anything that I would like to be perfect at, it's parenting. I'd like to be able to make all of the right choices at all of the right times, fixing all problems, hopefully before they even arise. On top of that, I'd like to know everything in advance. I'd like to know what issues may arise for my children, or what choices they'll be faced with, or what friends they'll make, or who they may date. I want to know how to set them up for success. I want to know how to educate my kids, both in and out of the classroom. I want to know how to love them, and to shelter them, and to protect them, and to prosper them. I guess I want to know everything that I need to know, and I want it now. See, this is the way I've always approached parenting. I can see this all throughout my kids' lives. I just wanted to get it right every single time. This kind of thinking was always a recipe for disaster, because it simply isn't possible. It's not possible for me to be everything for my kids, even though I wanted nothing more. This is a high standard that I have set for myself. It is seriously high. It's even a higher standard than I set for myself in my marriage or in my career or any other relationship that I could have. But why? Why do I subject myself to such unattainable standards? Maybe it's because I believe that they are far and away the greatest treasures that I could ever have on this earth. Because I've been given an enormous responsibility, and they are worth every possible effort that I can put forth. That if I don't get it just right, then somehow they'll be lacking. And if I fail, then maybe somehow they'll fail too. It's almost like how I do as a parent is who I am as a person. Lord knows every single parenting book or advice column will try to convince us of that. Have you ever felt like this? Maybe even a little bit have you felt like this? But in this relentless pursuit of perfection, we may not realize that we have lost our focus on something extremely important. Something that defines us far better than our parenting skills ever could. It's our connection to God. The God who created us is the same God who created our children, and as much as He cares for us, He cares for our children. He has a stake in their welfare. He cares about what happens to them, and He loves them better than we ever could. Psalm 127, verse 3 says that children are a gift from God. They are a reward from Him. And we know this to be true no matter how our kids come to us, biologically, adoptively, through fostering, or even through guardianship. Children are a blessing from God, and they are His first before they were ever ours. Psalm 139 says, "You created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days that were ordained for me are written in your book before any one of them came to be." God knew our children intimately long before we ever came to know them. He created them with meticulous care and fitted them with a unique set of gifts and talents and emotions and intellect and abilities and personality. And He did it all in His own image. And He has given them to us to love and to cherish, but only for a time. You see, our job is not necessarily to make sure that they have everything, or that we do everything for them, or that we are the perfect parent. We don't have to worry so much about failure, because worry isn't productive anyway, isn't it? But we can trust God to meet us in the middle of our inadequacies and our ineptitude. He completes us when we are insufficient, and He is in control when we are not. He has a design in mind for our children, and He will help us figure out what that is. No, our main job in raising children is really to help them get to know themselves and how God had put them together. We provide materially, of course, but we also help shape their character and guide their physical and their spiritual and intellectual and emotional growth. It is our duty to raise them from complete dependence to independence and then release them to God for His purposes. And throughout this process, we are not guaranteed smooth sailing. We know that there will be struggles and challenges and even heartbreak and pain. But we also know that there will be a multitude of joy and happiness that far outweighs any of the negativity. Great memories are created in almost every single day as we watch our children turn into adults. And it happens ever so quickly, right before our very eyes. You know, one of the best ways that we can connect with our children is to be connected to our spouses. Our marriage needs to give rise to a strong bond and unity, not only with each other, but also with God. Placing a high priority on loving and serving God and each other will give our kids an example of what this should look like in their own lives. But even if we find ourselves being single parents, we can still demonstrate how to put God first in all things. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 5 through 7 says, "And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to the commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road and when you're going to bed and when you get up." Now this verse reminds us that as parents, we are the ones who are charged with teaching our kids about God. Sunday schools and youth groups may do a great job, but they are only meant to augment what is being taught at home. And kids are quick to pick up on our hypocrisy. They know when we're faking it, because our actions speak louder than words. We can tell our kids how important it is to be a Christian, but if they don't actively see us pursuing God, they can't be expected to do that either. They need to see us engage with God. to talk about God, to learn about Him, and to actively pray to God with them. They must see us give Him thanks for all that He has done and worship Him with all of our hearts. We must show our kids how to seek Him in times of trouble and when we have more questions than answers. And they must see us trust Him to give us what we need. And they must see how much God means to us and how much we love Him on a daily basis and not just on Sundays. They need us to show them what the love of a perfect Father looks like. And see, that's just the thing. God created marriage and family to reveal God's character. The ups and downs of parenthood give strong evidence of how God loves us. He shows us great patience and forgiveness, so we extend this to our kids also. When we forgive, they will learn that God forgives. If we are harsh and critical, then they will assume that God will be the same. Our God is compassionate. So should we be. God tolerates much from us, so we should tolerate much from our kids. But God also disciplines, and we should too. How do your children see you actively pursue God? What would they say about your relationship with God? And when all is said and done, when we have done all that we can humanly do, when God has helped us complete the race that is called parenthood, we have to be prepared to let go. At some point, we will have to let go of our leadership and let God take over. As John the Baptist once said, "He must increase, so I must decrease." We have to let go and return our kids to their rightful owner. Now, don't get me wrong, letting go of our kids doesn't mean that we detach or become distant. No, it only means that we understand our role is leading our kids to dependency on God, and then we let Him take the wheel, so to speak. Still, isn't that the hardest thing to think about? We invest so much of ourselves into raising our kids. We put off certain activities. We forego our own ambitions. We sacrifice our time and our efforts and our finances and our emotions, and we see them through every growing pain, every illness, every crisis, and everything else under the sun. And can we say, wasn't it all worth it? Yes, 1,000 times yes, it was worth every minute. Now I can't imagine what I was thinking when I said I didn't want to have children. I guess I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I wouldn't change a thing. Although, if I'm honest, I do have. Since parenting is such an active stage in my life at the moment, as it is for many of my friends and many of you, I'd like to offer up a prayer. So let us take a moment and be in an attitude of prayer. Father, I thank you so much for all of those who are parents, trying their best to steward the gifts you had given them. You know parenting is hard, being a father yourself. We have a strong-willed Lord, and naturally so do our children. As parents, we take on the challenges of raising our kids willingly and lovingly, but it is really hard sometimes. I ask that you strengthen each and every parent and help us to feel your love and comfort. Help us all to let go of this relentless pursuit of perfection and keep our eyes on the bigger picture, that you have designed our children for your purposes. You have a will for them, and you take an active interest in what happens to them. Help us all not to feel judged or shamed in the way that we parent, but help us to know that with you as a co-parent, our kids will turn out just fine. Forgive our tendency to worry and our need to control. We ask that you take our preconceived ideas away from us and open our minds and our hearts to what you want to happen. You are ever faithful to us, and you will never abandon us, nor will you abandon our children. Thank you for all that you do for us, and thank you for all the ways that you take care of our kids. And thank you for the greatest treasures that we could ever have. They are yours, Lord. Please do what you want with them. In your name we pray. Amen. So thank you for tuning in this week, and hopefully we'll see you next week as we talk about our relationship with the church. Have a great week. See you later. Bye-bye.